Welcome everybody to the Magic Beans podcast. We are back again for episode number 70. I'm your host tonight. My name is Shorty and I have just one bean on the line. How's it going, Cracker?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Pretty good. Can you just hang on a minute, Cracker? I'm just in the middle of a game. I'm playing Arena on my iPhone.
Yeah, same here. Just always
finishing up the game. Yeah.
Trying. Anyway, that's all right. We'll forge on.
Hot news off the press this morning for us. Yeah, woke up this morning to Arena being on iPhones out of nowhere. So that was pretty cool. Very
long time in the download process there.
Yes.
It took a couple of minutes or hour or so, it felt like, to get the update. But, here we are.
Yep. Here's what it is. So we might touch on that or go into that a bit more maybe in some future episodes. But tonight we're just going to do normally our Evergreen series on this off week, but we're going to do a focused episode on the Kaldheim Championship that's coming up this weekend. So we're going to go through the metagames. We've been given the metagames by Wizards. We don't have the official submitted deck list by the players yet, but we've got enough to work on. We can go through some standard and historic. But before we get into that, Cracker, do you want to tell us about our sponsors?
Absolutely. It is Josh and Pat's MTG Bazaar. They are a Facebook auction page where they run auctions nightly for physical Magic cards. So you can pick up some great deals with cards going up all the time and premium auctions over the weekend. So you can get some really sweet, like, extended out cards and foils and some really old stuff as well if you're wanting to, put some fetch lands or some vintage lands like the original jewels in your commander deck or something like that. So check them out on Josh and Pat's and Facebook. Tell them the Bean sent you.
Absolutely. All right, so we mentioned it on the last episode that this championship was coming up. So this is basically the equivalent of the Pro Tours that we used to get, but obviously no more paper Magic or no high-level paper Magic at the moment. It's all getting played on Arena. And this is sort of the all the people that have qualified through Arena and through various other means, Magic Online and being in the MPL and Rivals and that sort of stuff, are all playing in this Kaldheim Championship. So we've got 211 players, and they're playing 3 days of Magic, so 2 days of Swiss rounds, 7 of Standard and 8 of Historic, with a bit of each on each day, and then the top 8 is double elimination Standard. So pretty cool events. We've seen these a few times before, and the coverage is normally pretty good. The gameplay is also very good, and got a bunch of good commentators. So they're good fun. Definitely worthwhile tuning into. But they kind of give us the shaping of the metagame. We've had, how long ago was Kaldheim released now?
It's been a while.
It's 2 months?
2
maybe?
months, yeah.
Yeah, maybe thereabouts. So Standard's kind of been not solved, but fairly steady. We did see a banning. We saw a banning not that long ago, didn't we? No, not since Kaldheim. No, that was Modern and Historic. I can't remember.
It's
too many bans.
Too hard to keep track of what's going on.
But Standards seem to be in a pretty good place where there's nothing super oppressive, nothing people are complaining about too much, and a lot of diversity in the decks that are being played. And Historic just had a big shake-up because we did have the Uro ban not that long ago, and
Correct.
We've recently had the Historic Anthologies number 4 getting put into the format. So
I don't know how much of a shake-up that had, but it was a thing that
it's a thing that happened.
That occurred.
Yeah. So, this is when we get sort of our first chance to see what the pros are doing with the formats, and they obviously put a ton of effort into this because, there's a lot of money on the line, 250 grand prize pool for this event, and then also for the Rivals and MPL players, there's points up for grabs for their ticket to stay in the leagues, I guess, so that they can continue being professional Magic players.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of this, is it kind of shapes what things are going to look like for the next year or so as well. It gives them the first kind of real go at where the pro scene is, and that's something that would often happen with the first big event of the year as well. You'd start to see who's going to in the old system lock up like silver and gold and platinum and all those kinds of things, and this gives us the first look at what that's going to be for the next little while. So it's quite interesting because there's quite a bit at stake.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, that means that the players are really putting in a lot of effort and actually trying. They're not just,
absolutely.
Playing a random F&M where they can just play whatever deck they want.
Yeah, a lot more than normal where they're testing with teams and things again. So it's always fun to see what they can come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we might start off with Standard. If you've got the metagame breakdown there, you can just run everyone through what we've got, and then we can have a bit of a look at the decks.
I do. So probably as no great surprise to anybody, Sultai Ultimatum sitting on top with 22% of the field playing that deck.
Which is not crazy numbers, but that's still fairly high.
Yeah, it's not insane. It's certainly not some of the levels we've seen at different points. But yeah, it's definitely it's not crazy for a standard set, right? Like we quite often see percentages in the mid-20s or what have you. So
we've seen in recent times, like over 50% of the field for certain deck types in standard. I'm pretty sure
we have. Yeah.
So 22% this is probably back to what we would call a good metagame. Really, you've got a good spread.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that the challenges here is that it's another Simic based deck, right? And it has
surprise.
Just feels like it's been on top for a very long time. So even though it's not dominant in this format, it's been dominant for so long that it's kind of just a continuation of that. But I mean, that's just true of where Magic has been for the last couple of years, and that's followed up by the next most played deck, which is Teamer Adventures. Again, that's kind of just been a mainstay. The Adventures package, really, ever since Eldraine first dropped, has just never left the very top of the metagame. You know, it's kind of gone out of favor a little bit at times, but there were always people who were doing really well with it. So, you know, at 17.5%, I mean, I'm not surprised to see that there. And then there's a couple of other still pretty good percentage sized decks here. We've got Mono Red Aggro at 16.6%.
The old favourite.
And then a bit of a throwback here, Shorty. It's made a bit of a resurgence. Cycling.
Yeah.
Cycling is back at 10.4%. So
the deck you were playing as we started this podcast.
That is true. The deck I just lost to was the next one underneath, which is Dimir Rogues.
Yeah, okay.
They had all the counter spells. There's 8.1% of that. So, the numbers start to drop off pretty steeply from there. Mono White Aggro, I guess, is pretty well represented as well at 7%. So, it's a pretty good mix in terms of you've got like a couple of big over the top decks in like Teamer and Sultai. Yep. And then, you know, a couple of really aggressive decks in like Mono Red Aggro, Cycling, and obviously Mono White Aggro giving you the name of what's going to happen there. And then kind of I guess Dimir is the Rogues deck can play like either a tempo game or more controlling game. It really depends on the build. We've seen a lot of different variations of that. So it will depend on the lists and what they look like. But interesting to see what comes from that.
Yeah, yep. So, no huge surprises. Looking at the deck lists, apparently there are a few random off-the-wall combo decks. There's a Garuda combo deck and a few other random things, but you always get them at events of this size, and it's the same back when we had proper pro tours that were sort of 400 to 500 players. There was always a certain amount of the field that had the off-the-wall decks, and they don't tend to do very well. That's why they're not
there's
a high
single
percentage.
Player playing the 4-color Garuda deck, so I mean,
exactly.
Maybe they know something the rest of the room doesn't, but yeah.
And you never know. Sometimes a deck like that can fluke it, but the numbers are certainly against them. It's unlikely that they're going to do very well. But yeah, no crazy huge percentages and a pretty good spread and a good mix of different styles of deck. Like you could look at that list of decks that you just went through there and find something for any type of player and also something for any budget. You know, you've got your mono reds and your cyclings that in paper and on Arena are super cheap to build because cycling especially, it's got hardly any rares.
It's just the lands, I think.
Now the sort of proper Jeskai version is the lands. Mm-hmm. But mono white's not too bad either. But yeah, then you've got your Sultai ultimatums that have got heaps of rares and mythics. So yeah, we might have a look at the deck. So the Sultai ultimatum deck, as you said, that's sort of it's the I don't even know the term that I'm thinking of. It's the newer version of the Simic deck. Like, as you said, we've seen Simic with some other colour in some form or fashion for the last year and a half, basically, and now we're on Sultai. And that's mostly thanks to Valky / Tybalt. So the big change once Kaldheim was released was getting access to some really powerful mono-coloured cards. So we're now playing, the reason why we're playing Sultai is for Emergent Ultimatum, which is the Sultai Ultimatum. It's black, triple green, blue, and it's search your library for up to 3 mono-coloured cards with different names and exile them, and then your opponent chooses one. That goes back into your library, and the other 2 you cast without paying their mana costs. So when that card's from Ikoria, that's come out a few sets ago, and there just wasn't really anything super powerful to be going and searching up for from your library. But Kaldheim gave us Alron's Epiphany, which is the 7 mana, take an extra turn and create 2 birds.
Mm-hmm.
Gave us Valky, who on the front side is a black card, so it does count for mono-coloured, but the rules still allow you to cast the ultimatum is allowing you to cast the card without paying its mana cost. So when you go to cast the card, you do still get the opportunity to cast the Tybalt side of it. So that's pretty good.
I hate just the inconsistencies of that drive me nuts. But anyway.
Yep. I did see Reese lose to that, not realising that the recent change to the Cascade rules didn't actually affect how that sort of thing works. And then we also got Vorinclex. So Vorinclex is the Phyrexian Praetor that we've spoken about before that doubles up all your counters on things. So you're basically getting those cards, and then you've got a bit of a toolbox of a few other things like Extinction Event. Sometimes you're playing Kiora Best the Sea God, the Saga from a few sets ago. But usually you're just Emergent Ultimating, you're ramping up to it with Cultivates, and you're sort of fixing your mana with Omens, playing Wolfwillow Havens as well to ramp up. Binding the Old Gods is a really good strong ad for this sort of deck. The 4 mana Saga that destroys a non-land permanent on its first chapter and then goes and gets your land on its second. You basically ramp up till you can cast an Emergent Ultimatum, and then you go and get an Alron's Epiphany, a Vorinclex, and a Valky, and you kind of put your opponent in a position where they have no good choices. It's whichever one you put back in their library, the other 2 that they cast are going to be really good. So you're just kind of stuck.
Yep.
And I've had plenty of games against this deck in playing mono red where you get them to 1 or 2 life and they cast an ultimatum and you just cannot win from there. They put down a Valky and ultimate it and exile all of your graveyard and then just cast all of your spells against you, and you're in a little bit of trouble. So obviously playing a bit of blue as well, you've got some card draw in Behold the Multiverse, which is another card from Kaldheim, a few counter spells, some removal in Heartless Act, and the Binding the Old Gods, and it's just a really solid, powerful deck that plays it's mid-range. Basically, it's just playing that mid-range slow control deck and just taking over the game. So, not surprising to see that being the highest percentage for these sorts of players who are very good players, and they like to play decks where there's a lot of choices and where their choices actually matter. So that's Sultai. Anything you got to say on Sultai?
No, I mean, the list that we're looking at here, the example is actually also a Yorion deck. It's worth mentioning in case people were wondering how we fit all these cards in there. It's because you're allowed 80 of them.
Yep, didn't even tweak to that.
Yeah, so look, you're just getting access to all of the most powerful spells and flexible sideboard options. So again, there is no great surprise here. If you look at, there's a bunch of spicy one-offs in the sideboard as well that you could expect to see. So look, I mean, this strategy has been good and will continue to be good. It's, a solid mid-range deck that just has that go over the top card. It's just kind of a win more thing that you actually need. I do find it interesting that there's no Ugins anywhere to be seen in here. Not in the sideboard. I mean, obviously you can't fetch it with Emergent Ultimatum because it's a colourless card. It's not mono-coloured. So I guess that's the downside. But I mean, I don't know. You would think that given how hard you're ramping, you could maybe make space for it. But it maybe just doesn't line up well against what other people are doing. So
yeah, I guess like your opponents are siding in things like disdainful strokes and that sort of stuff against you and other counter spells. So even if you go, I'll have a few Ugins in the sideboard, I'll bring them in for a slightly different plan, and it just doesn't matter. Like it's your opponent's sideboard plan is still going to be good against bringing in an Ugin. So, and I don't know how good it is. I mean, obviously it wipes the board of a lot of the creature decks, but you kind of don't really need to when you can search up the answers that you need anyway with your ultimatums.
Yep, absolutely.
So the next deck along the list in terms of percentage of the field is the Teamer Adventures decks, which there's a couple of different varieties. I know they did post in the article that some of the versions of Teamer Adventures are running Obosh, the Prey Piercer, as the companion, which obviously has some restrictions in all your things having to be odd converted mana cost, so it cuts off things like sideboard counter spells and that sort of stuff in some cases. And then there's sort of just your regular Adventures version that's not playing the Obosh that sort of opens it up to a few more options. So do you want to take us through and just, I mean, we've seen Adventures a million times, but is there anything different we're seeing now?
Yeah, I guess then the non-Obosh versions, they're basically just straight up what you'd expect. It's like Lovestruck Beasts, Bone Crushers, Brazen Borrowers. The only thing that there's a couple of new cards. There's the Goldspan Dragon, which is seeing a fair bit of play in both mono red. There's some versions of that kicking around with the big 4/4 Hasty Dragon in there, and also Alrund's Epiphany as well. So everyone's trying to take more turns here, Shorty. They're all greedy with how many things they want to do.
Who would play taking turns decks?
Look, it turns out it's been a powerful strategy to take extra turns since Time Walk was printed in Alpha, and it's still true, even though it costs 7 mana. It's still just worthwhile doing.
You get 2 birds, and you can get a discount if you foretell it.
That's technically true, and also not at the same time, because it costs you 2 extra mana. Anyway, whatever. Look, that's pretty straightforward. The Obosh versions are a little bit different. The example list here we've got is including Akoma, the Cosmos Serpent, from Kaldheim, which is an interesting card. So trying to get around some of those counter magic that you're going to see to combat the ultimatum decks and things. So kind of hedging a little bit with some different plans of attack. So yeah, interesting choices there. But I mean, the core package is still the same. It's Innkeeper, Lovestruck Beast, Borrowers, Bone Crushers. I mean, Bone Crusher Giant is the most played non-basic card in this whole event.
Yeah, non-land card.
I mean, that's just not a surprise to anybody. That has just been true since it was printed. It does everything.
Yep.
Turns out 2 spells on 1 card is a bit overpowered.
Yep. Probably the first cards I crafted from Throne of Eldraine, I reckon, as soon as they came out.
Up there for me as well. And just kind of haven't stopped playing that in most decks.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, look, I mean, I guess it's a real engine, and if it is left unchecked, it will just outvalue a lot of things. We've seen it time and time again, that you can stabilize against the aggressive decks quite effectively. I mean, just
the Great Henge.
Yeah, but even just going like Heart's Desire into Lovestruck Beast and just making a 1/1 and a 5/5, if you've got, a couple of those sitting around, then all of a sudden mono red is just, they're brickwalled so quickly because it's so hard to just deal with that size body early on. And then you just kind of, spend a couple of turns pulling ahead, and then, you've just got a couple of, like you said, the Henge to just start drawing cards, and then Elrond's Epiphany to just kind of really dominate the later game. So, expect this will do well. Yeah.
So, sort of continuing down the list, so we've got mono red aggro, which we've seen pretty much the same list for quite a long time now. And I've if you've been watching me stream at all, you see me stream a lot of mono red because I love just playing little fast red dudes and burning people's faces. It's good fun. About the only change we see with Kaldheim is the introduction of snow-covered mountains, so snow-covered lands, so you can run Faceless Haven, which is amazing. Being able to play the Faceless Haven on turn 3 and then play your 4th land on turn 4 is really good when your opponent is wiping the board. It just means, you wiped the board of my couple of 1/1 dudes. I'm still going to hit you for 4 with my Faceless Haven, so big addition there. And then Frostbite. People adopting Frostbite, seeing as you're running the Snowlands, just being able to, for 1 mana, take out a blocker or potentially a Planeswalker on occasion, although Planeswalkers aren't really a big thing at the moment, is pretty good and certainly an upgrade from Shock. It is a little bit annoying not being able to shoot it to the face, but still does pretty well. Next one on the list is Cycling, which is something you've played quite a lot of, but have you been updating anything in the list or any changes in these lists?
No, I'm just looking at these one. There's a couple of different things. Chewy, sorry. I'm tired. Chewy was playing the Jeskai version on stream, but I don't know how much I love that. I don't know that I love the mana base you get with it. That's just a personal thing.
I've played against it a fair bit on the ladder, and the previous versions were basically just white-red, and you were playing blue cards, but you didn't play any blue lands. It was just straight up cycling. Whereas with the mana, with the lands that we got, finishing off the pathway cycle and all that in Kaldheim, it means you can actually play actual Jeskai, and the big change that's allowed is playing main deck Improbable Alliances, and that card is a pain in the backside.
Yeah, I mean, the early, Valiant Rescuer followed up by a bunch of cycling has always been a really strong B plan for the cycling, the Boros cycling version, and this is just in some ways a better version of that. I mean, it's harder to cast, but it's also harder to get rid of. It's an enchantment as opposed to a 3/1, which dies to literally everything. It's there's definitely some real pros in that, and obviously then you get access to like negates and some other things. And I know Chewy has managed to turn his foxes from 1/1s with +1/+1 counters into like 4/4s with +1/+1 counters with starting development. He's a big fan of ambushing people like that, and you just get them out of nowhere.
Yep.
So
people forget you can actually cast that card.
Yeah, you can, which has always been an interesting option to have access to. So yeah, look, it's kind of still a one-trick pony.
Yeah, it is.
You have a little more versatility, obviously, in this way, but there's going long isn't really a thing.
I mean, going long is fine when you got Zenith Flares to finish off the game, but
sure. Yeah,
I guess the big change is actually having proper blue mana in the deck just means your sideboard is a bit more diverse and gives you more options. So having access to counterspells in the side is just such a big change that whereas previously it was, you were limited to white and red cards and you kind of couldn't dilute your deck too much because then your deck just didn't function. Whereas having Improbable Alliances and not having to rely quite as much on keeping certain creatures on the field and then cycling while they're on the field is a little bit better. It's a lot harder to remove an enchantment than it is for a creature. So a bit more reliable now, this deck. And yeah, like I said, not as much of a one-trick pony, but still it's doing the same thing and hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, correct.
Yep. Dimir Rogues is the next one, which, I don't think has really changed at all.
Nope, didn't get anything new. It turns out it was just a bunch of really good cards still. It's fallen off a little bit. I have played it. I was playing it through our league, and it does struggle in just 1-for-1ing people. It feels like for a while there that was a valid plan, but I'm not so sure that you can just get away with doing that anymore. And cards like Faceless Haven just make it really hard. You can't counter that, and it hits really hard. So look, it can be built kind of to take advantage of any given metagame. I think if you know what to expect, then you can probably tweak your deck accordingly. But I mean, as we've just talked about, you're running the range here, and I wonder whether it might just be stretched a little thin.
Yeah, like I'm looking through the sample list we've got here, and the only new cards are 2 Crippling Fear in the sideboard. That's it. So that's often a sign that a deck is just probably not going to be good enough when you're not picking up many new cards. Whereas all the other decks are getting all the new technology. It's not usually where you want to be. You want to be sort of keeping up and keeping in front of the metagame. A deck that basically didn't exist before Kaldheim came out, though, is Mono White Aggro, which is another deck that's making the most of Snowlands and Faceless Haven. So have you got the list for that one?
I do, yeah. So look, it's the other card that it got is the Luminarch Aspirant is quite a good pickup where you can start putting +1/+1 counters on creatures you control, so you can grow your team.
I've had that for a little while. That was from Zendikar.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go. Halvar is pretty good. Either as
Halvar and Redain.
Yep. As either the equipment or as the god themselves. And then, it's kind of more of the same. You've got, like Seasoned Hallow Blade and Alcide and Selfless Savior. So you're kind of just looking to sort of stack up. There's quite a few equipment in this deck, more of the Skyclaves and Shadow Spear and things. So it's been a little while since we've seen a decent equipment deck, and that usually has existed in the mono white or Boros space. So it's good to see that sort of coming back around as a viable option with all these like protection creatures that you've got going on.
Yeah, and it's kind of similar to mono red where it's a creature deck, and so it always suffered against board wipes where you lose all your little aggressive dudes that you've been bashing their face with, and you're kind of stuck with no cards left in your hand. And Faceless Haven just kind of fixes that problem. So you've still got something to keep putting pressure on them. And, you can potentially, I've seen it, people equipping all of the Skyclaves to their Faceless Havens and killing people
a lot
really
of mana,
quick.
but
it is, but when you're talking late game.
A lot of damage.
Yep,
look, the challenge with this style of deck is your sideboard is obviously severely hampered.
Yes.
So it's kind of just like I can get a little bigger, which is okay against maybe like mono red or something, or you can, try and get a little wider and more aggressive, but it's tricky. So I'll be interested to see how it does for sure.
Yeah. Then we got a couple of the Naya Adventures decks. There seems to be a few different versions of these getting around, but this deck kind of came out like when Kaldheim first came out. All of a sudden, this was the new big deck, and people were like, this is really powerful. It's doing really well, and it was basically the same adventure package. Your Innkeepers, your Lovestruck Beast, Bone Crusher Giants, all that sort of stuff. Playing the Goldspan Dragon from the new set. And then playing 4 Showdown of the Skalds, the 4-mana Boros saga that is like another card advantage engine. So you're getting card advantage from your Edgewall Innkeeper and your Adventures package, and then also having the Showdown to draw a bunch of cards and then put a bunch of counters on your dude. So it was really good for a while, and then people just kind of realised that the Teamer version was actually just better, and the Showdown probably wasn't as powerful as people thought. So obviously there's still people playing it, and it still can be really strong, but I don't see this being quite as powerful as the Teamer version. We'll have to see.
Have to agree there. I mean, like hitting a Showdown and then flipping like a dragon or 2 off the top of it and having like a bunch of spells you can't cast is pretty feels bad. So look, there's a lot to be gained here. When it comes together, the deck just runs away with games really quickly. But you also lose the some of your interaction because you don't have access to any of your counter magic and things like that.
Yeah. There's also some of the versions of running like the combo with the Goldspan Dragon and Unleash the Fury, which is a 2-mana instant that doubles the power of a creature. So it works pretty well. You attack with your dragon, you get the treasure, which gives you 2 mana. You can double its power. Also running Sajiri Shelter, which is the 2-mana protection spell. So same thing, works really well with the Goldspan Dragon. And then just randomly playing Kazul's Fury, which is the fling, the 3-mana fling that's also double-faced as a land. So yep, double the power of your Goldspan Dragon. Attack, double the power of your Goldspan Dragon, hit for 8, and then fling it at their face. It's an interesting way to win, but probably not your A plan A that you're sort of going for.
Pretty cheesy. It really does. But,
Yep. So a couple other decks. We got like the Gruul Adventures, which nothing's really changed in that, and then people are running the Doom Foretold decks again, which we've seen like Abzan and Esper Doom Foretolds for quite a while. Now they're running 4-color, so they can play all the Esper stuff, but also play Binding the Old Gods. So it's just a bunch of enchantments and sagas and things like that. So
and Yorion as well. Look, Binding is a really strong card.
Oh, yeah.
And, the the black also opens you up to, a couple of other things. And, so I don't know, there's eliminate and a couple of other things there as well. But, I don't know, man. I don't know about this. Just like,
so before we move on to historic, what would you be playing in this metagame? You just be running back your cycling?
Probably, but I don't know that I'd be thrilled about it. It's tough. Like, I mean, you and I have both played a fair bit of that, and sometimes the deck just feels like it can't lose, and then other times you just can't buy a game. So I don't know, man. Like, it's tricky. I'm not sure. The mono red deck, I think, is actually really well positioned. I wouldn't be surprised if that does really well. I imagine that's what you'd be jamming.
Yeah, I'd be jamming mono red. I mean, obviously, got a lot of practice with it, so know how to play that deck. But yeah, if people are trying to Sultai Ultimatum, you want to be super fast and just get in before they can stabilize and finish them off. And then you do have some decent sideboard options that deal with the ultimatums. I've completely blanked on what that card's called. The enchant Roiling Vortex. That's the one where people can't cast spells or they've paid no mana for them. Works pretty good against ultimatums. But that's what I think I'd be going with. But yeah, I don't know. It's with a field like this with the top players, I think they're going to be better off playing the ultimatum and adventure decks that have a lot of play to them, where there's a lot of decision trees and areas where they're much better playing than me is beneficial to them.
I always find that like I understand that with like a pro in a GP, that's true.
Yeah.
But if you're a pro against a bunch of other pros, like how much is the skill gap there compared to like PV sitting down to play us, right?
Yeah.
or whatever. But like PV sitting down to play against like Brad Nelson or someone like that, like the skill gap is
there's no skill gap.
I mean, there may be some, but you're talking about like, single percentage points or not even, right? So like, I understand that they always want to feel like they have the most control and the most agency over what's going on. But at the same time, if you can't leverage a skill massively, then I don't know. I always find that argument really interesting in these really small fields. And that's what this is. Like, this is a really small field. Everyone here can play.
Yeah. I mean, there's 211 players. I think like there's 70 I think in total between rivals and the MPL.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
The rest are, there's going to be a lot of really good players, and they've obviously had to have done well to get there. But there's also people who just fluked it and won got there through qualifying through random means and whatever, or playing Pauper on Magic Online and different things like that. So people can qualify in a bunch of different ways. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of really highly skilled players, but there's also going to be, I don't know, maybe 50 or so that are probably not that much better than you and I, Cracker. They just play Magic more.
They just play more than us. Fair enough.
Anyway, before I offend people out there, let's move on to the historic metagame. So do you want to run us through what we're looking at there?
Yeah. Giant Sacrifice, 31.3%. Cat Oven decks.
Yes.
Your personal favourite.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of interesting ones in here. Ores of Auras at 14.7%.
Yeah, we were saying before the cast, it's like, whoa, that's surprising.
Kind of. I mean, we did talk about this a fair bit when Core Spirit Dancer was introduced, and we were saying that kind of gave you the additional copies along with SRAM to really churn through your deck. So, yeah, interesting. Azorius Control at 8.5%. Gruul Aggro at 5.2%, and then things fall off pretty quickly from there. So you've got Abzan midrange, Sultai Ultimatum, Goblins, and Bant midrange all at 3.8%. Elves, Boros Cycling, Mono Red all in like the 2.4%, and then a pile of others where there's like, if you scroll down the list, there's a lot of people on like one-offs.
Yeah,
which is
a whole bunch of different decks.
Yeah, interesting.
An enigmatic incarnation deck. Mm-hmm. If you remember what that is.
Nope. I do like actually. It's
the pod for enchantments, I think.
Yeah, it is.
That
yeah,
one?
in your end step, you sacrifice it.
Yeah.
I watched Chewy play some of that recently in Standard. He had a miserable experience. He did not enjoy that at all.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, I appreciate the one person here repping Mono Blue Tempo.
Oh yeah,
get him dead with those Tempest tunes. Let's go. This is a pretty heavily stacked top end here. 31.3% for cat oven decks.
Well, it's more than double the next archetype. So 31.3 to 14.7. So yeah, that's a bit more. I guess that's probably a bit more common, and it's more of what you see when there is one deck that people obviously think is the better deck. And from what I've been hearing this week, I think most people think that Chunt Sacrifice is the best deck, and I would not at all be surprised to see a Cauldron Familiar ban incoming in the next, I don't know, month or so. I think one of the reasons why they banned it out of Standard was just the horrible, miserable gameplay, which it is on Arena, and that comes from somebody who really enjoys playing this deck and has played a hell of a lot of it. It's just not fun to watch, and it's not fun to play, and it's not fun to play against. And if it's the best deck, then I think, I would not be surprised to see them taking action on it. So is there anything in this list that we're seeing that's out of the ordinary? I'm looking at it, and it's all just the usual suspects, your Cats, your Ovens, Claim the Firstborns, Woe Striders, Mayhem Devils. Mm-hmm. That's Priest of the Forgotten Gods. That's sort of the base of that deck. It was the same base that we had in Standard, and then you're adding into it Scrap Heap Scrounger. It's a good target to sacrifice. It's pretty easy to bring back from your graveyard.
Yep. Binding of the Old Gods as well now.
Yeah, yep. Some versions are running Collected Company, which we've seen. Some are not. Some are running Trail of Crumbs instead. I haven't played a Collected Company version. I would lean towards playing Trail of Crumbs. I just think long-term,
I feel like you've got a lot of whiffs with a Coco version, man.
Yeah. And it's like Coco, you really want to be hitting creatures that have like enter the battlefield triggers and that sort of stuff as well, like to really maximize your value. And you pay 4 mana and you put into play a cat and a Priest of the Forgotten Gods, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, I was about to say, you really want to maximize on your mana gain as well. You want to be putting in like 2-3 mana spells, or a 3 mana and a 2 mana, but there's kind of like just Mayhem Devils in that 3 mana slot for the most part, right? So you want to be putting in like 2 Lovestruck Beasts, so you're getting 10 power and toughness onto the field. So I was never a huge fan of that, and looking at what Wizards have said without seeing the actual lists, there's of that 66, 56 of them were Trail of Crumbs and Goose decks, and 10 of them are the Coco Dreadhorde Butcher decks. So I would be leaning towards the Trail of Crumbs list, and I think that's probably where you want to be. But the other big thing you get in Historic for the cat decks is access to Thoughtseize, which obviously we didn't have in Standard, and that goes a very long way to taking out opposing problems. Turns out the best discard spell ever is, in fact, still just the best discard spell ever. So, yeah.
Yep.
Look, no surprise. And don't forget Phyrexian Tower, which has been kicking around for a little while here. But that's another huge upgrade over the standard versions as well. So,
yeah, slightly better, and it's the same. Every time you go back to an older format, you get better mana. You've got access to the pathways and the shock lands and all that sort of stuff, as well as like Dragon Skull summits and things. So, the further back you go, the more sets you've got access to, the better mana you're going to have, because there's more lands. So, turns out it's pretty easy to play 3 colours. Mm-hmm. The Orzhov Auras list. I don't know if we've actually got a list here. I'm just looking at one.
No, I can't see
on
one.
Another site. But it's as you said, we've seen this deck before in Historic. I've played this deck in Historic. I've played this deck in Pioneer.
Mm-hmm. That's where it was first, right? Yeah, we just kind of ported it forward.
It was Ken Yukihiro and the what was it, the Pioneer Pro Tour, where what was that stupid deck with the exile your whole library and
that one. Yep. It was a Thassa's Oracle combo.
Yeah, Thassa's Oracle and whatever that creature was that exiled you.
Phyrexian Ingester or
something like that. Anyway, whatever. It's completely irrelevant to this.
Because it's banned.
But yeah, we spoke about when SRAM got put into Historic, when we got, is that Kaladesh Remastered? Mm-hmm. That's the set that was from. When that got put into Historic, we talked about it on the cast, that we now basically had the Pioneer deck in Standard, but even better because Pioneer didn't have Core Spirit Dancer. That's a modern card, and it wasn't in Pioneer. So not surprising that deck is good, but I mean, I haven't played a ton of Historic lately. Have you? Probably
no,
not.
I haven't, no.
So I haven't seen, I haven't even heard of people playing this deck, so it might be that we just completely missed it and we had no idea. But yeah, it could be a good deck for going against Jund Sacrifice, and that might be why we're seeing it as the second most played card, second most played deck. Being able to give your creatures flying with Angelic Gift and then protect them with your various means of protection between your Selfless Saviors, your Sajiri Shelters, and whatever else you've got, is a good way of going over a cat. And
how do you beat a Priest of
you.
Forgotten Gods, though? Because these decks tend to not play very many creatures at once. You're looking to just kind of suit up and then go. I suppose there's probably like Alcide and stuff like that. There's usually a couple of like throwaway creatures that you could have access to.
You're also playing the Cartouche of Solidarity.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Solidarity. Yep. Wow, that's a hard word to say. Which is a single white mana enchantment that when it enters a battlefield, you create a 1/1 warrior creature token with vigilance, and it gives your creature +1/+1 at first strike. So you're playing 4 of them, and that just gives you fodder for the priest. So I don't think it's too hard to sort of play around the priest. And you've also, you're playing 4 Thoughtseize in the main deck, so
true.
You can always just take it out of their hand if you think it's going to be a problem. So will be interesting to see how that deck goes, because I'm tipping that would be a direct response to something like Jund Sacrifice, and it may just be the answer that people needed for it. So next deck is good old boring as Azorius Control.
Oh man, this list makes me just want to vomit.
And we're done.
It's win
it's
conditions
got 4
are
Teferis.
Teferi. I suppose there's some sharks you can
Teferi.
technically, it's Hero of Dominaria, so you get to win by tucking Teferi and decking your opponent.
Good times.
Look, it's picked up in recent times both Doomscar and like OG Wrath of God. So like it's got some good tools. And like Shark Typhoon is another way. But it's basically just removal and counter spells. That's it.
Yep.
Couple
Nothing
of
exciting
spells.
there. Takes a long time to win, and takes a long time to lose, so just boring.
Yeah, it's not how I want to play Magic.
No.
Next.
Moving on. So we've got Gruul Aggro, which Gruul Aggro's been around for ages. It's not that different to the standard versions, but you do have cards like Burning Tree Emissary, which can lead to some pretty aggressive draws. There's also the Voltaic Brawler, which is the energy dude that comes in, gives you energy, and you can pump it, which works conveniently well with Burning Tree Emissary because its mana cost is red-green. So, it's just quick, aggressive, and get them dead.
And just cleave. They're also playing Coco in this list as well, which is an interesting point. So,
not
this
surprising.
is a sort of deck where Coco is legitimately good. They're playing 32 creatures. You've basically got Collected Companies and Embercleaves as your only misses, except for lands, obviously. But that's kind of where you need to be, I think, for that card to be at its best.
Yep. Also playing 4 main deck Scavenging Ooze, which works pretty well against cats. Most of the time. Sometimes it can get a bit awkward depending on the amount of food they have available at the time when you're trying to exile it. But if a savvy Jund cat sacrifice player will be able to play around it, but there's definitely times when you can get rid of it and foil their plans.
Yeah, particularly if you can surprise Coco into it or something like that and have a good floating. You can maybe catch them unawares, but that's a lot of mana for this deck to be holding up. You don't really want to be sitting around with 5 mana just going, I'm going to eat this cat. You're probably in a bad spot already. Yep.
Got Abzan, mid-range, Sultai Ultimatum. You can probably sort of lump those 2 decks together. One thing I did hear with the Sultai Ultimatum deck, which obviously is pretty similar to what we've seen in Standard, just with a few extra cards, is apparently, I can't remember what event it was, but there was an event very recently. Maybe it was the League weekend or something like that, I don't know, but there was the Sultai deck went 0-26 for matches. Like, it did not win a single game. Its win percentage was 0. So I don't know what to make of that. Obviously, still 8 people think it's very good, but
I didn't think Nissa decks could lose that bad. It's playing Nissa and Growth Spiral, man.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like the list we're looking at here is playing a ton of one-offs, so it's just about the only card. You've got 4 Explores for ramp and 4 Languish for your board wipe, 4 Emergent Ultimatums, and everything else is basically just one-offs. A couple of other ramp spells here and there, but you're just searching up the thing you need off of your ultimatums, and that's kind of it. So, interesting list. But yeah, it is surprising, like a Nissa Growth Spiral ramp deck to have such a poor record is interesting. So we'll have to see how that goes. There might be some new hot technology.
Maybe.
We don't know. The next one down the list, which surprised me the most, Goblins, down to 3.8%, only 8 people playing Goblins. This went from, like, the top
Muxus
deck.
needed banning.
Yeah, me complaining about Muxus every 2 minutes because I hated that card.
By the way, Muxus still should be banned. It's a stupid card. It's definitely overpowered. But
yeah,
I guess people learned how to play against it, or
yeah. I mean, we saw it. I think it was a previous championship where Autumn Burchett ended up in the finals against, I can't remember the guy's name, from the Irish dude, I think he was. And he was on Azorius Control, and yeah, just completely had the Goblins number. And that was kind of the last time we saw Goblins be a big power in the metagame. Well, so
even then, Goblins
like
wasn't,
nothing's changed.
No, but
in the
Goblins
deck.
wasn't even super represented there. It was just that Autumn did particularly well that weekend, from memory.
Yeah, yep. But yeah, I'm looking at the list, and there is nothing new, I don't think, and nothing has changed. It's just the same Goblins. We got 36 creatures and 24 lands, and a few non-creatures in the sideboard, but not very many of them. And yeah, Goblins does the same thing Goblins does. So you have those games where they just hit that super early Muxus and put 1,000,000 power on the board. And then other games where you control the board a little bit, kill their Goblins, and you just kind of don't really worry about what they're doing because it's just not matching up with the power of what you're doing. So will be interesting to see how Goblins go. The rest of the decks on that list, anything we want to talk about there? There's Elves.
Yeah, so look, we talked about this being an option now where Elves might start to make its presence felt in the metagame. You know, with the black being added in, it gives you kind of a few different options to stretch out a little bit. But look, Imperious Perfect is a powerful effect, just being able to pump out 1/1s that are actually 2/2s because it's, giving all your elves +1/+1. So, look, and it's another good Collected Company deck. That's one of the things that Elves has done since Collected Company was printed is, you just get to do that instant speed thing. And if it's left unchecked, Alice or a Shepherd just makes all your elves into dinosaurs somehow.
Yep.
So that's a pretty good overrun kind of thing. So, look, I mean, obviously it's not massively represented. It's cool to see. I don't know how well it will do. One of the things that I did think was interesting is we talked about with the Historic Anthology 4 that just came out, was the introduction of now I can't find it, in cycling, the Flameblade Adept.
Yep.
And it seems like that's maybe done enough in conjunction with Hollowed One to put that as an option available. So, look, I mean, obviously I'm interested in that because I enjoy cycling. It's still very much a one-trick pony, but it might just be able to get in underneath things. I'll be interested to see if that kind of makes the difference. Yeah,
and then rounding off the list, Mono Red Burn, the old faithful Wizards package, Gitu Lava Runners, Wizards Lightning, that sort of thing. Yeah, played that a ton. So brings back a lot of good memories. And then, like I said, there's a ton of just random. We've got Neo Storms, we've got 5-color Niv Mizzets.
9 lives.
We both looked at the same one. Yep. Looks like there's a Demir gift, so I'm assuming that's Godpharaoh's gift deck and an Orzhov gift deck. So a whole bunch of different things. Yep, that's probably BBD. He's I think that's his fallback for historic when he doesn't know what to play. The one I'm surprised that we're not seeing more of is the Selesnya Angels deck that's been doing really well, where he just Coco into a couple of different angels and just gain a ton of life. It's pretty hard to deal with, but obviously it's not strong enough. I did see some of the lists were looking at playing main deck Grafdigger's cages and things like that as well, and then there's quite a few of them in the sideboard, so maybe people thought it just wasn't good enough, or they just went Jund Sack is where you want to be. So still a pretty diverse metagame, but fairly top heavy, I guess.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Like as a format gets older, in quotes, or has a larger card pool, then you do tend to see a greater variance, and that's what you want, right? Like it should be that way, where you've got more archetypes and decks represented. But clearly we're still really, really top heavy here with the Jund sacrifice package. So I will be interested to see if it does kind of even remotely well, which it should, just by the volume of people playing it, then perhaps there'd be something coming. But I mean, I'm also whatever. Like if they want to leave it for a little while, we've got Strixhaven around the corner and stuff. They're introducing things all the time. So I don't know. It's interesting. They've literally just shaken everything up with banning Uro and some other stuff. So maybe that was the most obvious next home. People had a lot of reps with it already, and there wasn't a huge amount of time to understand what was going on. So maybe it's just kind of a default position. It's actually not like as busted as it seems by the numbers here, but I mean, we'll find out. Yep.
So what would you be playing this weekend?
I actually like the Auras deck. I think that the that like Thoughtseize into like just difficult to deal with threats, and you draw a lot of cards and you just have a lot of protection. I think I'd be in for that myself. What about you? What about you?
I mean, I would like to play Jund Sacrifice, just because I like the deck, and I think there is that potential that something's going to get banned, probably the cat. So it'd be nice to play it and finish it off. But I think if I knew that that's how the metagame was going to look, I think I would be inclined to be playing the Auras deck as well. I think it's going to have a good matchup against a lot of those top decks that we're seeing, and probably a pretty good matchup against Jund Sacrifice. So we could be completely wrong. That may not be how it plays out. I have no idea. We've certainly been wrong in the past. We're wrong most of the time. So why do people listen to us again?
We're entertaining.
Still don't know. Sure we are.
Something.
So that's going to do us for tonight. Hopefully that's going to give you enough of a rundown on what to expect this weekend. They will release the deck lists after the first round, I believe, on the Friday, which for us here in Australia, that's like super early Saturday morning that the tournament will be kicking off. So by the time you wake up on Saturday morning, you should have access to all the deck lists. And then you can watch the replays that they'll be putting on through the rest of the weekend. I think I'll be trying to sort of have it on in the background, or at least be listening to the audio component of it, probably while I'm doing stuff around the house. So should be good. And then, probably on next week's podcast, we can have a chat about how things played out and, how wrong we were about which decks were good and which decks were bad. So sound like a plan, Cracker?
Absolutely.
Very good. All right, well, usual housekeeping stuff. So, come and join us in our Discord so you can get in on all the awesome events and things that we do. The link for that is in the show note, as always. You can show us some support by picking up some sweet Magic Beans gear from our merch store. Go and check out our sponsors, as Cracker mentioned at the start of the podcast, Josh and Pat's MTG Bazaar on Facebook. Join the auction group and pick yourself up some bargains. You can find us on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. All of those places, just search for Magic Beans Podcast or Magic Beans Cast, and you'll find us there. I'm on Twitter at Peace Inc. Cracker, you are?
At Joel Hill _.
I actually called you Cracker and didn't call you Chewy. I'm getting better, sort of.
Maybe. I mean, I might have done that once tonight. But anyway.
All right, so that's it from us. Thank you, as always, for listening. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next time.